You ever come home expecting peace, and instead find your entire life locked behind a keypad? Because that's what happened to me. 3 years overseas, sand, sweat, and explosions, and I come back to Minnesota thinking I'm finally going home. My grandfather's 40-acre lakefront, the cabin he built with his own hands, the place I planned to retire to. But when I pull up, there's a gate, a $2,000 electronic gate, with fake stone pillars, and a robotic voice demanding a resident access code. I sat there in my dusty pickup staring at a sign that said, Willowbrook Estates. And my first thought was, what the hell is Willowbrook Estates? Then she appears, golf cart, screaming private property. You're trespassing. While I was overseas defending my country, someone back home was busy stealing my family's land. And what started as one woman's lie would explode into one of the wildest property disputes this county has ever seen. Stay with me because you're not gonna believe how deep this went. I came back from 3 years overseas, thinking I'd find my grandfather's cabin. Waiting, dusty maybe, but home. 40 acres of lakefront, the same shoreline he bought back in '87 for 12 grand. He built that place himself, no contractors, no blueprints, just sweat, cedar, and stubborn pride. You can still see the pencil marks he left on the beams, like quiet reminders he meant this place to last. Every summer, that porch filled with the sound of kids laughing and adults arguing over who caught the biggest fish. 4th of July cookouts, Christmas mornings by the fire. It wasn't luxury, it was legacy. My grandfather used to say, you don't really own land like this. You just take care of it for the next Brennan. When he passed while I was deployed, the will was simple. Everything, every tree, every nail, every inch of that shoreline came to me. The deed still carries his signature from 1987, proof that what we built here was earned, not gifted. There'd never been an HOA here. No fines, no committees, just neighbors fixing each other's docks, swapping tools, and helping when the septic froze. Nobody charged anyone to breathe lake air or visit their grandkids, so yeah, when I say this land was family, I mean it literally. It was more than a spot on a map. It was blood, memory, and years of hard work baked into the soil. I figured when I got back I'd start my next chapter right there on that porch. What I didn't realize was that someone else had already decided to rewrite my family's story. You ever notice how one person can change the entire rhythm of a place? That's what happened to Lake Thornton the year Deirdre Hutchinson showed up. 52, recently divorced and armed with insurance money and opinions about how everyone else should live. She bought the biggest, ugliest house on the lake, this concrete fortress squatting on an artificial hill like it was built to intimidate the trees. The rest of us had cabins with peeling paint, cracked decks, and stories in the wood grain. Hers looked like it belonged in a gated suburb, not next to fishermen and retirees. Within 6 months, the smell of her imported Kentucky bluegrass fertilizer was choking out the wildflowers that had been here since my grandfather's time. She called it beautification. The rest of us called it control. At first, it started small. Notes on windshields, complaints about boat noise. Then came her voluntary road maintenance fund. Funny thing, County Road 47B had been maintained by the county since before I was born. But that didn't stop her from patrolling in her shiny SUV at dawn, clipboard in hand, writing down who owed what. Then came her masterpiece, the Willowbrook Estates project. A fake community with a fake gate and a name that sounded like it came from a luxury brochure. She installed cameras, stone pillars, and signs claiming private entry. Most of my neighbors just wanted peace, but Deirdre wanted control. While I was halfway across the world, she was busy reshaping Lake Thornton into her personal kingdom. And that's the thing about power. Once someone gets a taste of it, they don't stop. They expand. And soon she'd set her sights on the one piece of property she could never legally own. Mine. The first time I saw that gate, it didn't even look real. It was right where my family's property line meets the county road. The same dirt path my grandfather drove his old Chevy down for 35 years. Only now it wasn't a road anymore. It was an entrance. a gleaming motorized symbol of everything wrong with what Lake Thornton had become. And right across the top, in shiny brass letters, Willowbrook Estates. She'd literally renamed the land my grandfather bought. Turns out, while I was overseas, Deirdre had convinced a sleepy county clerk to reclassify our access road as part of her private community. No notice. No hearing. Just one signature slipped through the cracks of bureaucracy. Now, what used to be my driveway was technically the front gate to her subdivision. She even set up a toll system, $50 for non-resident access. That meant old neighbors, like Gladys Morrison, had to pay to visit her grandkids at the lake. Public fishermen were being charged $20 a boat to launch where my grandfather taught me to cast. And to top it off, she told everyone I'd been killed overseas, that the property was abandoned and she was just managing it temporarily until it could be sold. She changed my locks, moved my family photos into the shed, and pointed security cameras straight through my cabin windows like she was guarding a crime scene instead of someone else's home. That's the moment I realized this wasn't just arrogance. This was a hostile takeover, and the woman who built her empire on lies had just trespassed into something far more dangerous, my family's legacy. When I finally came home, I expected peace. What I got was a gate demanding an access code like I was some stranger trying to break into my own life. The robotic voice repeated, "Resident authorization required." I sat there for a second, dust still on my uniform, realizing my family's land had been turned into somebody else's security system. Then came the paperwork. 3 days after I broke that silence and drove through anyway, a certified letter arrived. Thick envelope, perfume, fake professionalism. The header read, Willowbrook Estates Management Office. Inside was 8 pages of legal nonsense that would have made a lawyer choke. She claimed I owed $3,600 in unpaid community assessments, a $500 gate installation fee, and $200 for a compliance inspection of unauthorized structures. Unauthorized? My grandfather's tool shed. Environmental hazard? His compost pile. Apparently, even the wildflowers counted as unapproved landscaping. She cited the Minnesota Planned Community Act, like she'd found a magic law that turned her neighborhood fantasy into government authority, and she threatened a lien on my land if I didn't pay within 10 days. That's when my training kicked in. The Army teaches you one thing very well: don't panic, gather intelligence. So instead of yelling or calling a lawyer, I started digging. If she wanted a war on paper, I'd fight it her way, because if this HOA was real, there'd be records. If it wasn't, there'd be cracks big enough to drive a Humvee through. Either way, I was done being quiet. She'd built her empire on fake authority, and now I was about to pull every nail out of it. I spent the next week in the county courthouse, the kind of place that smells like old paper, coffee and dust from 1,000 forgotten arguments. Down in the basement, surrounded by metal filing cabinets and flickering lights, I started digging through decades of records. And what I found made my jaw clench harder with every page. First discovery, there was no HOA, no articles of incorporation, no state filings, no tax ID. She'd been using official-sounding names on letterhead, but legally, Willowbrook Estates didn't exist. Second discovery, the road reclassification, the one that turned my access path into her private entrance, was done without the required public notice period. The county engineer admitted it was changed because of a community development request. Translation: she'd slipped it through before anyone could object, and then came the motive. In her divorce settlement, Deirdre was required to keep her property value above $400,000 to continue receiving monthly alimony. If it dropped, her payments stopped. Suddenly, her obsession with controlling the lakefront made perfect sense. Shoreline access can boost values by up to 30%. But it got darker. I found records of road maintenance fees collected from 7 families, totaling about $2,100 a month, with no maintenance contracts, no receipts, no accounts. She was pocketing the money. and tucked between these files, I found a copy of a fake purchase offer she'd made at probate court, trying to buy my deed for 15 grand, or while I was still overseas. That's when it hit me. This wasn't confusion. This was a plan. Deliberate, calculated, and signed in cheap ink. And she just handed me the evidence to take her down. Once I knew what I was dealing with, I switched from defensive to reconnaissance mode. If she wanted to run a fake HOA, I was going to document every inch of it. I set up trail cameras hidden in the trees, same kind we used for perimeter security overseas. Within 48 hours, the footage spoke louder than any lawyer ever could. There she was. Her landscaping crew dumping yard waste and debris directly onto my shoreline, treating it like their personal landfill. Then more footage, her standing beside a folding table, a hand-painted sign reading, "Day use fee $20 per boat." She was literally charging the public to access water that had been free since the day my grandfather first cast a line. But this wasn't just about me anymore. The deeper I looked, the more neighbors came forward. Mike Patterson, who ran the local bait shop, told me his weekend business had dropped 40%. Gladys Morrison, 80 years old, admitted she almost signed away her power of attorney because Deirdre told her I was killed in action. Sarah and Tom Justice, both attorneys, had quietly researched the law for months and couldn't find one shred of legitimacy in her so-called Willowbrook estates. And then came the invoices. $12,000 billed to neighbors for property management, services that never happened. The receipts? None. But social media showed the truth: new gazebos, imported Japanese maples, luxury landscaping, all paid for with money she'd stolen under the banner of community improvement. By then, the community wasn't divided anymore. We were furious, and what had started as one woman's power trip was now looking a whole lot like organized fraud. When people like Deirdre feel cornered, they don't back down. They double down. And that's exactly what she did. 2 weeks after I started asking questions, another certified letter landed in my mailbox. This time it wasn't about unpaid dues. It was a full-blown lien claim, or as she spelled it, lien, for $8,900 in alleged violations and assessments. She even cited Minnesota Statute 515B3-116, like she'd passed the bar exam in her spare time. The document had fake notary stamps, shaky formatting, and the kind of bold confidence only a fraud could have. Then came the call from the state environmental agency. Some concerned citizen had reported my grandfather's septic system as an imminent groundwater hazard. The inspector scheduled an emergency visit and warned of $10,000 in fines if violations were found. I didn't have to guess who filed the report. 2 days later, the inspector showed up. Professional guy, clipboard, boots, and 20 years on the job. He took one look at the system and laughed. "Son, this thing's grandfathered under 1960s regs. It's cleaner than half the new installs I see." He even noted the false report as a potential criminal offense. But Deirdre wasn't finished. She called my commanding officer at Fort Bragg, claiming I was unstable, suffering from combat stress, and threatening families. The Army didn't play along. They contacted JAG, and Captain Rodriguez was furious. False mental health reports about veterans aren't just cruel, they're illegal. That same week, the Lake County Gazette ran a front-page headline, "Veteran returns home to find property under siege." The spotlight was finally on her, and once the truth hit daylight, even her allies started backing away. By this point, I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't just about a gate. It was about exposing a lie that had gone way too far. So I built a team, not of soldiers this time, but of neighbors who were just as fed up as I was. At the center of it was Sarah Justice, the attorney who lived 2 lots down. She'd been quietly collecting evidence for months. Over coffee at her kitchen table, she laid it out like a battle plan. Step 1. File a quiet title action to confirm my ownership and end her fake HOA authority for good. Step 2. Request a temporary restraining order to stop any further interference. Step 3. Hit back with defamation and damages for the social media smears she'd been spreading. But that was just the beginning. We reported her so-called management company to the State Revenue Department, pointing out that she'd been running an unlicensed business for 2 years. Minnesota law? $10,000 per violation. 7 families, 24 months of invoices. The math added up fast. Meanwhile, I had surveyors remark my property lines in bright orange stakes, legally documented, GPS mapped, and impossible to dispute. Mike Patterson offered his bait shop for a community meeting, where neighbors brought stacks of fake invoices and stories of intimidation. Gladys Morrison produced original easement records from the 1960s, proving that Access Road had never belonged to Deirdre in the first place. And Captain Rodriguez from JAG confirmed that every one of her veteran harassment claims was officially logged as false. It wasn't just defense anymore. This was a counteroffensive. And for the first time, the entire community was marching in the same direction, straight toward justice. If you think Deirdre was done, you don't know desperation. The more cornered she got, the more reckless she became. It was like watching a reality show villain spiral in real life. Except this time, the stakes were my land, my name, and my peace. First came the surveillance. A beat-up sedan started parking near the public boat launch every morning. Inside, a man with a camera lens the size of a telescope, snapping pictures of my cabin like he was filming an episode of Dateline. Turned out he was a private investigator she'd hired to document aggressive behavior. Yeah, because drinking coffee on my porch must have looked terrifying. Then came the bribery attempt. Word got around that she'd offered the county road supervisor $5,000 to make her illegal road reclassification permanent. Thankfully, the guy had integrity and a conscience. He reported the attempt immediately, handing over her voicemail messages as proof. But the wildest twist came next. That same private investigator reached out to me, said he'd had enough. Turns out Deirdre asked him to plant evidence, a bag of drugs, fake proof to back her police complaints. When he refused, she threatened not to pay him. He gave me the recordings clear as day, her voice, her plan, her downfall. Meanwhile, the community was uniting. 3 families filed official complaints with the state attorney general. And Mike Patterson's bait shop became ground zero for what locals started calling the Restore Lake Thornton movement. Photos of her gate, her bogus signs, and her cash-only boat fees spread online like wildfire. Her empire was cracking, her story collapsing, and all that remained was the final, very public reckoning that she couldn't bribe, bully, or lie her way out of. By the time the county commission meeting rolled around, the whole town knew something big was about to happen. You could feel it in the air, like the moment before a storm breaks. The conference room was packed wall to wall, neighbors, reporters, camera crews, even the county sheriff. For once, everyone was there to see her held accountable. Deirdre made her grand entrance 20 minutes late, heels clicking, sunglasses on, pretending she still ran the show. Her lawyer looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. She opened with the same speech she'd rehearsed for months, claiming she represented law-abiding families and that I was a dangerous veteran with anger issues. The performance was flawless. Until the county attorney stood up. He thanked her, then dropped the hammer. The county had finished its investigation. Her HOA, never legally formed. Her business? Unlicensed. Her liens, invoices, and letters? Fraudulent. And the state attorney general had officially recommended criminal charges for fraud and attempted bribery. You could have heard a pin drop. That's when I stood up, calm as ever, and laid out everything. My deed from 1987, my survey reports, audio of her trying to plant evidence, and bank records showing she stole over $25,000 in neighbor fees. Neighbors backed me up one by one. Mike, Gladys, Sarah, all with proof in hand. Then came the moment no one will forget. The sheriff's deputy walked over and served her with a warrant. Her face fell. The cameras flashed. By the end of that week, the gate was gone. Her house was in foreclosure and Lake Thornton was finally free. Her empire collapsed. Our community healed, and the legacy my grandfather built stood stronger than ever. This wasn't revenge, it was justice. Hit like if you believe every neighbor deserves to be heard and every lie deserves to be exposed.